Everyone, this is Martha with Nature Niche, and happy Monday. For today's topic, I wanted to show you some very cute eastern newts that my friend found in her window well. So newts are a member of the salamander order, and in the state of Michigan there's just one, the eastern newt, and it has two different subspecies. Southeast Michigan has the red-spotted newt, which has two rows of black-bordered red spots that are really red or orange in color, and that's in the southeastern part of the Lower Peninsula. Here in Midland and kind of the rest of the state, you're more likely to find the central newt subspecies, which is smaller, and as you can see, these guys are pretty tiny. But it either lacks the red spots completely, or they don't have the black borders. So like I said, this is what you would typically find throughout much of the rest of the state. Newts have a really unique life history. They lay eggs in the water. They hatch into aquatic larvae, and then they change into a terrestrial or upland form. Those juveniles are called F's. So you can think of those as kind of the teenage newts. And then they go through metamorphosis again and become aquatic breeding adults with tail fins to help them swim around. So they are amphibians, and they do tend to absorb a lot of things through their skin. So it's very important when you handle them that you've washed your hands, you don't have sunscreen or bug spray or anything like that, and really handling them as little as possible is helpful. So a clear glass or plastic container like this to observe them is helpful. And it's important to, not keep them out of the leaf litter, not let them dry out. It's important that they stay moist. So let's take a look at their habitat. Newts tend to be found in small permanent ponds with aquatic vegetation, and they're most abundant in places where there are no fish, as they can be predators. They'll also occupy temporary ponds that dry up seasonally, and shallow areas of large lakes, river backwaters, and other freshwater areas that have mud substrates, so sometimes ditches and marshes. The F's are found along shorelines and within both deciduous and coniferous forests near these wetland habitats that the breeding adults occupy. The species can be locally abundant, but populations can decline if wetlands are drained, if the water becomes polluted, or if forest is removed around their breeding ponds. The adults can survive on land if aquatic habitat dries out and becomes unsuitable. They can also do that to rid themselves of external aquatic parasites like leeches, and to migrate to new breeding ponds if the landscape is connected by forest between those bodies of water and has moist leaf litter. The larvae, so you have aquatic eggs that are covered in a gelatinous material, and they're attached to aquatic plants or other objects like twigs underwater. And you can find those during the breeding season, which runs March through June. And they're pretty tiny, so the larvae are only 7 to 9 millimeters long. They tend to be olive colored. They have feathery gills. Then they go through the first metamorphosis to the F stage, and they leave the pond in late summer. So these guys are pretty tiny, and I think that's about where we're at on the life cycle with these guys. So the F's are red-orange in color. They tend to have light yellow bellies. And the bright color helps warn predators that they have poisonous secretions. So they have skin glands, and to make them not very tasty to predators. And the color is a warning of that. They're only about inch and 4/10 to about 3 inches and 4/10 in length. Their skin is rough and bumpy, and their tails tend to be rounder in cross section than either the larvae or the adults that swim around in the aquatic habitats. And so they can be in that F stage for a long time, 2 to 7 years. Then they go through a second metamorphosis and become aquatic adults. So the adults live, they go back to the breeding ponds with the permanent water, and they tend to be olive, green, brown, or red brown above, with small black spots all over their back and tail. And then they may have the red spots with or without a black border, depending on the subspecies. Their throat and belly tends to be yellow with tiny black dots. And they have a dark eye stripe. The tail is taller than it is wide and finned. They tend to be 2.5 to 5.5 inches long. And they're active both day and night, and can be found foraging under ice in some ponds in the winter. And in comparison, these Fs tend to be more nocturnal when it's more humid, or come out walking the forest floor after a rain event. And to show you a picture and a good resource when trying to figure out different amphibians, a couple I want to mention, this Michigan frogs, toads, and salamanders out of Michigan State University is a great one that I like to leave in my car when I'm going to be out at different sites. And so here are those 3 life stages that I just spoke of. Here's the aquatic adult, and the brighter colored F, so the terrestrial kind of teenage part of the life cycle, and then the feathery gills, aquatic larvae part of the life stage. And then another picture I wanted to show, here's another picture of an aquatic adult, and this I pulled from the University of Michigan Museum of Zoology Animal Diversity website. So that's another great place to learn about the life history details of Michigan's amphibians. So sometimes newts can skip the first metamorphosis, and they'll just do one and go straight from aquatic larvae to aquatic adults. But it's more common that they go through that F stage and spend 2 to 7 years kind of crawling around the forest floor. Predators include birds, mammals, fish, and other larger amphibians. And like I said, they have those toxic secretions to deter their predators. They have an important ecological role to play. One as food for those predators, but also they eat aquatic insects. So mosquito larvae, for example. So we're very pleased to have them around and doing that. The larvae will eat water fleas and snails, beetle larvae. The Fs will eat small inverts in the leaf litter like snails, springtails and soil mites, and the adults like midge larvae and the larvae of other aquatic invertebrates. So it's great to have them around. And I always like to talk about, what can we do to really help support these species with our own properties and in our own yards. So one of the things we can do is protect and restore their habitat, leave the wetlands, leave the forest surrounding those water bodies so that the landscape is connected and this species can go through all of its life phases. And then we can also monitor or retrofit our window wells if we need to. So check your window wells often. I found lots of frogs, skinks, snakes, occasionally the baby bunny. Things do get down in our window wells, so you want to check those regularly during the active season and help rescue things. And depending on how your window wells are constructed, you might be able to put screening or some other, blockade so things can't get down there, especially if you aren't able to monitor with frequency. So I just wanted to mention that. But I hope you enjoyed this close-up look at eastern newts, and we're gonna let these guys go. Have a good week.